Germany had emerged as the largest economy in Europe. Germany's extraordinary success is down to the pragmatism of its business.
German Mittelstand is family dominated, forward-thinking, long-term thinking, reliability are very important values. Changing moods on a political landscape and changing frameworks are toxic for our way of doing business, and we want that to go away.
German business is not given to making big political statements out of step with government policy, but talk to those in decision-making positions, and it is clear that they want to secure a good deal with the United Kingdom. BMW employs almost 90,000 people here in Germany and exports just under 1 million cars annually. The UK is a vital market.
What we're really seeking right now is more clarity, more certainty. Because in our cycle of investment, cycle of development, it's about a 7-year or so period that we look at. But we are now, of course, starting to think about what comes next. And what we need to see now is what is going to be the trading relationship, how are the logistics going to look, what is going to be the requirements for people moving across the continent, because all of these things are important to us today, and by the way, they will be just as important tomorrow.
Berlin is well aware that if the European Commission is allowed to put up trade barriers against Britain, it will be German business, German consumers and German employees who will suffer.
I think it's very important that we complete the first phase successfully. The first phase of the negotiations, which looks at the financial consequences of Great Britain leaving the EU. And then it's not a question of punishment payments. It's about when you are part of a multi-layer contractual obligation and you want to leave that. Then, of course, it takes a whole lot of obligations which you have to deal with, so both sides are satisfied and can live with the consequences.
It is in everyone's interest for the UK to part on good terms. Of course, there was going to be upset when the UK voted to leave, but creating uncertainty over the terms of UK's exit will simply have a disruptive effect on exports to UK markets. Far better to have a sensible, amicable negotiation that results both sides being able to trade together and work together post-Brexit. Markus Krall is Managing Director of Götz Partners and heads the financial institution industry group.
So is it true to say that if we negotiate Brexit well, then a good Brexit can actually strengthen the United Kingdom, the European Union and Germany?
It's absolutely true. I think that this is about two things. It's one about proving that free trade is possible between a European Union that is smaller and a former member country. If you don't prove that free trade is possible there, then the question becomes, what is Europe standing for? Number two is that I also believe the free trade, free market and democratic and less bureaucratic approach that the UK has chosen as the path into the future is a role model for Europe.
The time's come both for the United Kingdom and for the EU to be more clear about what kind of deal we can achieve. Both sides need to be bold. As long as we remain open to free trade and sensible cooperation, we can arrive at something that will benefit both sides. But one thing's obvious. If we are an open and free trading economy, we've got one big cheerleader on our side, and that is German business.
Well, that was Gisela Stuart setting out her case, and we'll be hearing from the opposite side of the argument in coming weeks. And Gisela's joining us in the studio now, as does Alastair Campbell. He used to work for Tony Blair in Number 10. He set up the New European newspaper to campaign against Brexit, and he is so pro-European that at this year's Labour conference he was heard playing Ode to Joy on the bagpipes. Welcome to both of you. Gisela, we'll start and pick up with your point there in the film that you think that German business wants the EU to offer the UK a generous deal because it's in their interests. Yet, the president of the German equivalent of the CBI said defending the single market must be the priority for the EU, and the president of the German Employers Association says the cohesion of the remaining 27 member states has the highest priority. It doesn't sound like they're putting business ahead of politics.
And the president of the CBI, just after the referendum, Markus Kerber, said it would be in no one's interest to create trade barriers and introduce tariffs. But there are two bits which are still misunderstood. On the UK side, I don't think there's a full understanding that economic interests are incredibly important, but they try to achieve the economic interests with a cohesion of the 27. And once we look at the trade deal, I think you will find that different interests will raise their head in different countries. The German car industry is as big a lobbying group as the financial sector is here. And the second thing on the UK side, I think, the European Union has its own problems. The banking crisis is far from over, but the big rifts which are going on is the EU is currently losing its second biggest net contributor. And countries like Germany want a deal with the UK, which is a free trade open market deal where there's other tensions within the EU which want to become more protectionist. And that's a bad thing for them.
Alastair Campbell?
Well, I mean, I think if you put together Gisela's film with the Jacob Rees-Mogg interview, whether you're on the Labour side of the Leave or you're on the Tory side of Leave, the hard right side that Rees-Mogg represents, it's delusional and it's all driven by wishful thinking. So you go and find a businessman who says, yes, Brexit can be good for Germany. The vast bulk of British business think this is a disaster. The vast bulk of European business think this is a disaster. But one of the many delusions on which they ran and won their campaign was this idea that they need us more than we need them. It is not true.
Well, let's look at some of the numbers on that. The EU sells about £80 billion more in goods and services into the UK than we do to them, and Germany has the biggest trade deficit with us at about £26 billion. It is in their economic interest.
I'm not saying it's not. Of course, it's in everybody's interest to get a good deal, but it is a myth that they need us more than we need them. The damage that will be done to us, even with a good deal, and let's be frank, where these negotiations are, I've seen plenty of European negotiations, Theresa May is going to end up either with a bad deal or with no deal. A bad deal is bad, no deal is a catastrophe, and that's where we're heading.
Is it?
Look, you're doing something which you are really good at, which is you're setting up straw men which weren't there to begin with and then knock them down.
Like what?
Delusional. There was a whole lot of business.
135 billion.
Okay. Let's just start.
The Brexit bonus.
Let's just start with if we've had a referendum, which is a democratic decision. Now, I know you don't like it, and a lot of the businesses would have preferred to go in with the status quo. The world around us is changing enormously, but we've had the referendum. Undermining political institutions is in no one's interest, because I happen to think that it's functioning democracies which produce economic prosperities.
Yeah, if the democracy didn't stop on June the 23rd. Theresa May
you want to
fought an election on a hard Brexit. It was rejected. Let me just
complete this. If they're currently the process of implementing, and business, as we heard from BMW, they want certainty. So trying to undo last year because you didn't like it will increase the certainty.
No, I'm not saying that.
There will be elections, European elections in 2019. There will be a change of the Commission. There will be a change of the Parliament. We have got a narrow window to implement a mandate of a referendum which Parliament voted for the terms. It voted for the implementation. So rather than you encouraging other countries to actually undermine this country, how about you and I working together and get the best deal?
Because we totally disagree. We totally disagree. And the other
you don't want a good deal? I mean, you must be prepared to work with people to get the best deal.
I'm much in favour of a good deal, and I could actually give them some advice as to how you get a good deal. The first thing you do is you have a cabinet that has an agreed strategy. 18 months in, they don't have that.
But you're undermining the deal.
I'm not undermining the deal.
Yes,
I'm continuing to pose questions about what they're trying to do and how they're trying to do it. And I'm also trying to say, because this is democracy, democracy is the ability for Parliament, which is not doing its job properly, and the public to keep scrutinising, and if they want to change their mind, having the right to do so.
But you were tweeting yesterday, encouraging the Taoiseach, the Irish Prime Minister, to play hardball with the UK.
Absolutely.
That sounds like you're undermining the UK's position. Whose side are you on here?
I am on the side of the UK. And I fundamentally worry that if we go down the path that Gisela and her friends are taking us down, and Theresa May and Boris Johnson and Michael Gove and the rest of them, this chaotic, shambolic negotiations, we are going to do fundamental, lasting damage to the country that I love. I don't care about the European Union, I care about Britain. And we're going to put in tariffs, massive costs. You talk about customs. Did you know that the CBI did a paper the other day? If every lorry going through the ports today was stopped for just 2 minutes, we create an instant 17-mile traffic jam. These people, they don't give a damn about the facts. They've got their ideologies.
I'm not these people.
Yes, you are, I'm afraid,
Hold
Gisela.
on.
You are these people who are leading this country to a catastrophe.
Let's just not conflate.
So I'm not going to work with you,
Let's just you either decide that you're implementing a democratic decision of a referendum which was called, which was conducted, and
Fine.
over 17 million voted one way.
Stop me debating it.
That is fine.
Just as Nigel Farage said he would not have accepted it.
Stop talking about Nigel Farage. You've got me here.
You're in bed with him, Gisela.
I'm not.
You are.
Vote Leave was not Nigel Farage. Stop creating these kind of myths. We've had a democratic decision. We hear from business, as we did over in Germany, that there's no desire to punish the United Kingdom.
Correct.
There's a battle
That's because they're behaving reasonably.
There's a battle of protectionism and free market going on. If we implement this property with almost as good as zero tariffs, give business the kind of certainty they want, then we can get a good
Zero
deal.
tariffs, it's wishful thinking.
So you want a bad deal
I don't
to prove you're
want
right?
it. I'm saying you're driven by wishful thinking.
But the way you're going to get no deal.
Hang on a second. Gisela Stuart, you're saying that business will intervene to prevent things like tariffs being put in place. They're leaving it a bit late, are they not, to come and start putting pressure on?
No, I think what you will find is business is actually laying out the kind of things which they need to get those kind of deals. And, you know, I can find as much fault with the speed of the progress. But what I do resent, I really do resent, is that you're actually encouraging other countries to undermine this country to get a bad deal.
Let me say why I spoke out in support of the Irish Taoiseach. Because I spent a lot of my time with Tony Blair and his team on the Good Friday Agreement. These people who are driving this hard Brexit without ever thinking that through, still no answer on how you do Brexit in Ireland without a hard border. And I'm saying I think the Irish Taoiseach is absolutely right to call out this government on the incompetence, the fact they haven't thought it through, and they're putting the peace process at risk. I will keep saying that because it's true.
But you accept the result of the referendum and that we will be leaving the EU? Because shortly afterwards you were calling for a second referendum.
Wait a minute, I accept the result of the referendum, but I do not accept that we're necessarily going to leave, because I think the country is entitled to change its mind, and I think as the chaos mounts, as the costs mount, as we see more and more incompetence, as the lies that we're told can keep getting exposed, the public is entitled to change its mind and will change its mind.
Gisela.
There's absolutely no evidence at the moment that...
Come out with me.
Would you like me to finish the
Carry
sentence
on.
as
Carry
to what
on.
you think there is no
Carry
evidence?
on.
Okay.
Carry on.
That there's a changing of mind happening. There is a crystallization. Well, Alastair, unlike you, I've actually fought 5 elections.
Well done.
I have won 5 elections.
Well done.
I probably have talked to more people than you have.
Sure
so let's just go back.
I'm just saying, come out on the road with me and we'll test it.
It currently shows that about 30% on either side, 40% of the population in the middle just want us to get on with. And if that film showed us anything, if we want to... You want to make it a self-fulfilling prophecy that it's a disaster. I don't.
No, I don't.
I want to implement a deal which is good for British jobs. I want one where we address some of our structural fundamental problems. The rest of the world is changing in terms of technology, and
the rest
I want
of the world
this
is
country...
laughing its head off at us.
Well, you know, currently Germany hasn't even got a government, you know, and nobody's laughing about that.
And they're still strong and stable. Strong and stable without a government.
We'll have to leave it there, I'm afraid. Gisela Stuart, Alastair Campbell, thank you very much for coming in.